A black woman is relaxing by her own pool on a beautiful afternoon. Then a white neighbor storms over, convinced she's trespassing. He calls the cops. Two angry officers arrive, ready to drag her out of what they think is someone else's property. But here's what none of them know. She's not just the homeowner. She's their new boss, the chief of police. And everything they're doing? It's all being recorded. What happens next will blow your mind. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And if you love stories about justice and karma, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't regret it. Her name is Adriana Hollis. She's wearing sunglasses, sipping cold lemonade, and letting the weight of the world slide off her shoulders. For the first time in weeks, she's not thinking about briefings or budgets or the mountain of paperwork waiting for her at the office. She's just breathing. This is her home, her pool, her backyard, her dream. Adriana had worked her entire life for this moment. 23 years in law enforcement, nights studying for exams, promotions earned through grit and grace. And just 2 weeks ago, she made history as the first black woman ever appointed police chief in Cypress Ridge. But today, she wasn't Chief Hollis. She was just Adriana, a woman enjoying her own sanctuary. That peace didn't last long. Across the street, a man was watching. His name was Gerald Pritchard. White, mid-50s, bald head shining in the afternoon sun, shorts that were 2 sizes too small, and a personality that made people cross the street to avoid him. Gerald considered himself the eyes and ears of the neighborhood, the protector, the one who kept things safe. But what he really was? A busybody, a man who spent more time watching other people's lives than living his own. He stood at the edge of his driveway, squinting across the street at Adriana's backyard, his face twisted with suspicion. Then he started walking, straight toward her gate. Adriana heard the footsteps before she saw him. Heavy, deliberate, angry. She lowered her sunglasses and turned her head. There he was, standing outside her fence, staring at her like she was a stain that didn't belong. "Hey!" Gerald shouted, his voice sharp and accusing. "Who are you? What are you doing back there?" Adriana sat up slowly. She didn't say anything right away. Just looked at him. Calm. Measured. "Can I help you?" she finally asked, her voice polite but firm. "Yeah, you can help me by explaining what you're doing trespassing on private property," Gerald snapped. Adriana raised an eyebrow. "Trespassing? That's right. This house belongs to my friend, Mark Hendricks. He moved out last year. I know everyone in this neighborhood, and I've never seen you before." Adriana took a breath. She could already see where this was going. "This is my house," she said simply. Gerald laughed. But it wasn't a real laugh. It was bitter, mocking, the kind of laugh that cuts. "Don't lie to me, lady," he said, shaking his head. "I've lived here for 12 years. I know who lives where. And you? You don't belong here." Adriana felt the familiar sting. The same sting she'd felt 1,000 times before. In grocery stores, at gas stations, in spaces where people looked at her and decided she was out of place. But she kept her cool. "I moved in 2 weeks ago," she explained. "I bought this house. In cash. Now, I suggest you leave before this gets uncomfortable." Gerald's face turned red. "Uncomfortable? You're the one who should be uncomfortable. You're lying. You're squatting. And I'm calling the police." He pulled out his phone and started dialing. Adriana could have stopped him. Right then and there. She could have pulled out her badge. Could have told him exactly who she was. Could have watched his face crumble in real time. But she didn't. Because Adriana wanted to see something. She wanted to see how far this would go. How quickly assumptions would turn into action. How fast a man like Gerald could weaponize the police against someone who looked like her. So she sat back down, picked up her lemonade, and waited. Gerald was already on the phone, pacing back and forth like a man on a mission. Yes, 911? I need to report a trespasser. She's at 428 Magnolia Lane. No, I don't know her name. She's a black woman. Mid-30s. She's in the backyard, acting like she owns the place. Yeah, I'll wait here. He hung up. Then he stood there, arms crossed, staring at Adriana like a hunter waiting for his prey to be dragged away. 10 minutes passed. Then the sound of engines. Tires on gravel. Car doors slamming. 2 patrol cars rolled into Adriana's driveway. 2 officers stepped out. Officer Bryce Callahan. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Buzz-cut. A man who walked like the world owed him respect. Officer Travis Kemp. Shorter. Stockier. A permanent scowl on his face. Known around town for his temper and his quick trigger finger. They didn't knock on the front door. They didn't ask questions. They marched straight around the side of the house, into the backyard, like soldiers storming enemy territory. Adriana heard their boots before she saw them. And when they appeared, her heart didn't race. It didn't skip. It just steadied. Because Adriana Hollis had been here before. Maybe not in her own backyard. But in moments like this. Moments where she had to prove she belonged. The officers stopped a few feet away from her. Hands where we can see them, Callahan barked. Adriana blinked. Slowly. Deliberately. Excuse me, she said. We got a call about a trespasser, Kemp added, his hand resting on his belt. You're not supposed to be here. Adriana stood up. Slowly. Her voice calm but cold. This is my house. Don't argue with us, Callahan snapped. Just cooperate, and we won't have a problem. You already have a problem, Adriana said quietly. The officers exchanged a glance. Then they moved closer. We're going to escort you off the property, Kemp said. Let's make this easy. That's when he reached for her arm. And Adriana moved. Fast. She twisted out of his grip and stepped back, her eyes blazing. Keep your hands off me. Both officers froze. Their faces hardened. You just resisted an officer, Callahan said, his voice rising. That's a mistake. No, Adriana said, her voice like steel. You made the mistake. She reached into her beach bag, pulled out a black leather wallet, and opened it. Inside, a golden badge gleamed in the sunlight. The officers stared. Their faces went pale. Adriana held the badge high, like a sword. Chief Adriana Hollis. Cypress Ridge Police Department. Badge number 0529. Silence. The world seemed to stop breathing. Callahan's mouth opened, but no words came out. Kemp looked like he'd seen a ghost. And across the street, Gerald Pritchard stood frozen, watching his perfect plan fall apart. The air in that backyard changed in an instant. Chief Adriana Hollis stood there, badge held high, her eyes locked on the 2 officers who had just stormed into her property like she was a criminal. Officer Bryce Callahan stared at the badge, then at her face, then back at the badge. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Officer Travis Kemp looked like someone had just punched him in the stomach. You're the new chief? Callahan stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. That's right, Adriana said, her tone ice cold. And you 2 just violated about 6 protocols in the last 3 minutes. She stepped forward. Not aggressive, but deliberate. Powerful. Let me walk you through this, she continued. You responded to a call. Fine. But did you verify the claim? Did you check property records? Did you ask for my identification before putting your hands on me? Neither officer spoke. No, Adriana answered for them. You didn't. You saw a black woman by a pool in a wealthy neighborhood, and you assumed I didn't belong. You assumed I was lying. You assumed I was a criminal. Kemp finally found his voice. Chief, we were just responding to. To what? Adriana cut him off. To a call from a man who doesn't know who lives in this neighborhood? To racial profiling? To your own biases? She pointed toward Kemp's hand, which was still hovering near his belt. You reached for me. Without cause. Without authority. In my own home. Callahan's face had gone from pale to red. Sweat beaded on his forehead. We didn't know. You didn't care, Adriana corrected. And that's the problem. Then she did something that made both officers' blood run cold. She pointed toward the roof of her house. See that, she said. They looked up. A small black camera with a blinking red light was mounted near the corner of the roof, pointed directly at the backyard. Security cameras, Adriana said calmly. 4 of them. All recording. Audio and video. Crystal clear. Callahan's face went white again. Kemp actually took a step back. So here's what's going to happen, Adriana said, pulling out her phone. You have exactly 5 minutes to call your supervisor and report what just happened. Every detail. Every word. Every action. Chief, please. Now. Her voice left no room for argument. The officers fumbled for their radios. Their hands were shaking. Their voices cracked as they called into the station. Dispatch, this is Unit 7. We need to speak to Lieutenant Harris immediately. Yes, it's urgent. Yes, ma'am. Adriana stood there, arms crossed, watching them squirm. She didn't feel satisfaction. She felt tired. Tired of proving herself. Tired of being questioned. Tired of living in a world where her presence in her own home was considered suspicious. But she also felt something else. Power. Not the power to destroy these men, though she could, but the power to change things. To make sure this never happened again. To the next black woman. To the next family. To the next child who didn't fit someone's narrow view of who belongs. Across the street, Gerald Pritchard was still watching. He couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see the officers' body language. The way they kept looking at the ground. The way they seemed scared. He smiled to himself. Justice, he thought. Finally getting that trespasser out of Mark's house. But then something strange happened. 3 black SUVs pulled up to his driveway. Gerald's smile faded. Doors opened. People stepped out. Official-looking people. Clipboards. Badges. Serious faces. A woman in a dark blazer walked straight up to him. Gerald Pritchard? She asked. Yes. I'm Officer Denise Carmichael with the Housing Authority. We need to speak with you. Gerald's heart started to race. About what? You've received multiple complaints over the past 18 months, she said, flipping through papers on her clipboard. Harassment. False police reports. Racial profiling. Intimidation of neighbors. That's ridiculous, Gerald sputtered. I'm just keeping the neighborhood safe. Safe? Another man stepped forward. He was with code enforcement. Mr. Pritchard, you've called the police on black families barbecuing in the park. Latino teenagers riding bikes. An Asian couple walking their dog. You called 911 on your mail carrier because you thought he was casing houses. Gerald's mouth went dry. Today was the final straw, Officer Carmichael said. You made a false police report. You knowingly lied to emergency services. And you caused 2 officers to violate the civil rights of a citizen. A police chief. Gerald looked across the street. And that's when he saw her. Adriana Hollis. Walking toward him. Badge on her belt. Authority in every step. She stopped at the edge of his driveway. You messed with the wrong woman, Gerald, she said quietly. I didn't know. You didn't care, Adriana said, echoing her earlier words. You saw someone who didn't look like you, and you decided they didn't belong. You weaponized the police. You used your privilege like a weapon. Gerald tried to speak, but nothing came out. Officer Carmichael held up an official document. Mr. Pritchard, you're being served with an eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate the property. What? Gerald's voice cracked. You can't do that. I own this house. You rent, the officer corrected. And your landlord has been notified of your behavior. They're not renewing your lease. You're done here. Gerald's knees buckled. He grabbed onto his mailbox for support. This isn't fair. Fair, Adriana said, her voice sharp. Tell me about fair, Gerald. Tell me about the black family you harassed until they moved. Tell me about the college student you called the cops on because he was walking suspiciously. Tell me about every time you made someone feel like they didn't belong in their own neighborhood. Gerald couldn't answer. He just stared at the ground. Adriana turned and walked back toward her house. She didn't look back. Behind her, Gerald sank to the ground. His neighbors watched from their windows. Some shook their heads. Others smiled quietly. No one came out to help him. Because for 12 years, Gerald had made this neighborhood uncomfortable for anyone who didn't look like him. Now karma had finally caught up. Back in her yard, Adriana found Officers Callahan and Kemp still standing there, looking like they wanted the earth to swallow them whole. Your supervisor is on the way, Callahan said quietly. Good, Adriana replied. You'll both be suspended pending investigation. If that footage shows what I know it shows, you'll be terminated. Yes, ma'am, they both said in unison. Adriana looked at them. Really looked at them. You want to know the sad part? She said. This didn't have to happen. If you had just asked me for ID. If you had just treated me like a human being instead of a threat. If you had just done your job the right way. Neither officer responded. Get off my property, Adriana said. And think about what kind of officers you want to be. If you even get that choice again. They left. Heads down. Shame written all over their faces. Adriana stood alone in her backyard. The sun was setting now. The sky painted in shades of orange and pink. She picked up her glass of lemonade. It was warm now. The ice had melted. But she took a sip anyway. Because she had won. Not just for herself. But for everyone who had ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. The next morning, Cypress Ridge woke up to a firestorm. Not a literal fire, but something just as powerful. Something that spreads faster than flames ever could. The truth. Adriana's security footage had gone viral. By 6 a.m., it was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, news websites. Every platform you could think of. The video was only 2 minutes long, but those 2 minutes told an entire story. You could see 2 white officers storming into a backyard without permission. You could hear them shouting commands at a woman in a swimsuit. You could watch as one of them reached for her arm. And then the moment that made millions of people gasp, the badge reveal. The officers' faces going pale. The realization hitting them like a freight train. The headlines came fast and furious. Black police chief harassed in her own home by her own officers. New chief reveals badge after being mistaken for trespasser at her own pool. Racial profiling hits home, literally. When the boss gets profiled, a police chief's story goes viral. By 9 a.m., every news station in South Carolina was covering it. By noon, it was national news. CNN. MSNBC, Fox News. Everyone was talking about Chief Adriana Hollis. At Cypress Ridge City Hall, Mayor Patricia Jennings, a sharp, silver-haired white woman in her 60s, knew she had to act fast. She called an emergency press conference. The room was packed. Cameras everywhere. Reporters shouting questions before she even reached the podium. Mayor Jennings raised her hand for silence. Yesterday's incident, she began, her voice firm and clear, was completely unacceptable. What happened to Chief Adriana Hollis should never happen to any citizen in this town, especially not to the chief of police. The cameras clicked and flashed. Officers Bryce Callahan and Travis Kemp have been suspended without pay, effective immediately, the mayor continued. A full investigation is underway. If the evidence confirms what we've all seen in that video, they will be terminated. Permanently. A reporter shouted from the back. Mayor Jennings, was this racial profiling? The mayor didn't hesitate. Yes. Absolutely. and Cypress Ridge will not tolerate it. Another reporter. What about the man who made the false report? Gerald Pritchard is facing eviction and potential criminal charges for filing a false police report, the mayor said. Actions have consequences. And Mr. Pritchard is learning that the hard way. The press conference ended. But the story didn't. Across town, Gerald Pritchard was living his worst nightmare. His front yard was a disaster. Moving boxes everywhere. Furniture stacked haphazardly. His life, literally falling apart in front of the whole neighborhood. Neighbors walked by. Some slowed down to watch. But not one person stopped to help. Mrs. Chun, the elderly woman next door who used to bring him homemade dumplings, just shook her head and kept walking. The Martinez family across the street, the ones Gerald had called the cops on 3 times, watched from their porch. Their teenage son raised his phone and took a picture. "Karma's beautiful, isn't it?" his mother said quietly. Gerald heard her. His face burned with shame. A moving truck pulled up. 2 workers hopped out. "You Mr. Pritchard?" one of them asked. "Yeah," Gerald muttered. "Where you headed?" Gerald didn't have an answer. He hadn't thought that far ahead. He'd been so focused on controlling everyone else's life that he forgot to actually live his own. "I don't know," he finally said. The worker shrugged. "Well, you've got 29 days to figure it out." Meanwhile, at the Cypress Ridge Police Department, something historic was happening. Chief Adriana Hollis stood at the front of the main conference room. Every single officer in the department was there. Over 100 people. Some sitting. Some standing. All eyes on her. She wore her full uniform. Badge polished. Shoulders squared. Head held high. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," she began. "What happened to me yesterday? That wasn't just about me." The room was silent. It was about every black person who's been told they don't belong. Every brown person who's been followed in a store. Every person who's been pulled over for driving suspiciously. Every family who's been made to feel like outsiders in their own community. She paused. Let her words sink in. "Some of you are uncomfortable right now," she continued. "Good. You should be. Because if you can't see the problem, you're part of it." A few officers shifted in their seats. "From today forward, things are changing," Adriana said, her voice growing stronger. "Every officer in this department will undergo mandatory anti-bias training. Every complaint of racial profiling will be investigated thoroughly. And your body cameras? They better be on at all times. No exceptions." She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as she could. "If you're not comfortable with that," she said slowly, "if you think this is too much, if you believe you can't treat every citizen with dignity and respect regardless of their skin color, then turn in your badge today. I'll accept your resignation." No questions asked. Nobody moved. Adriana nodded. "Good. Because this badge means something. It means we protect and serve everyone. Not just the people who look like us. Not just the people in the right neighborhoods. Everyone." Then something unexpected happened. One officer stood up. Then another. Then another. And they started clapping. Not everyone. But enough. Enough to send a message that change wasn't just possible. It was happening. Right here. Right now. That evening, Adriana returned home. Same backyard. Same pool. Same lounge chair. But this time she felt different. Lighter somehow. She poured herself a glass of lemonade and sat down. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of purple and gold. And then she heard a small voice. "Excuse me?" Adriana looked up. A young black girl stood at the fence. Maybe 9 or 10 years old. Hair in 2 puffs. Bright, curious eyes. "Hi there," Adriana said with a warm smile. "What's your name?" "Amara," the girl said shyly. "I live 3 houses down." "Nice to meet you, Amara." The girl fidgeted with her hands. "My mom told me. She said you're the boss of all the police officers." Adriana chuckled. I guess that's one way to put it. I'm the police chief. Amara's eyes went wide. That's so cool. I want to be just like you when I grow up. Adriana felt her throat tighten. She stood up and walked over to the fence. Knelt down so she was eye level with Amara. You know what? Adriana said softly. You can be better than me. Amara looked confused. Better? But you're the boss. Listen to me, sweetheart, Adriana said, her voice gentle but firm. Don't ever let anyone tell you where you don't belong. You belong everywhere. In any neighborhood. In any school. In any career. You hear me? Amara nodded, her eyes glistening. You're smart. You're strong. And you're going to do amazing things, Adriana continued. Don't let anyone make you small. Amara reached through the fence. Adriana reached back. Their fingers touched. A simple moment, but powerful, because that's how change really happens. Not just through press conferences and policies, but through moments like this, when a little girl sees someone who looks like her standing tall, speaking truth, refusing to back down. 3 days later, a letter arrived at the police station. It was from the governor's office. Adriana opened it in her office. Chief Hollis, it read. Your courage, your composure, and your commitment to justice in the face of injustice have inspired our entire state. You turned pain into policy. You turned hate into hope. For that, South Carolina thanks you. Inside the envelope was a golden pin. It was simple but beautiful. Engraved on it were 3 words. For justice. For all. Adriana pinned it to her uniform. Right next to her badge. She looked at herself in the mirror. And for the first time in a long time, she felt proud. Not just of what she'd accomplished, but of what she represented. Hope. Change. Possibility. Because somewhere in Cypress Ridge, a little girl named Amara was watching. Learning. Dreaming. And for every Gerald Pritchard in this world, for every person filled with hate and fear and ignorance, there was an Amara. A child who would grow up knowing she belonged, knowing she mattered, knowing she could be anything she wanted to be. And that was worth everything. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this, they matter. And together, we can make sure everyone knows they belong. Drop a comment below telling us what you think. Where are you watching from? What did this story mean to you? We'll see you in the next one. Stay strong. Stay proud. And remember, you belong everywhere.